Jim Irwin. Al graduated West Point and received Masters of Science degrees in Aeronautical and Astronautical Engineering from the University of Michigan, right?
Michigan.
Michigan. I think you had another Master's in something else.
Yeah, instrumentation.
Instrumentation.
Don't worry about it.
Fred Hayes. Fred was lunar module pilot on Apollo 13. His crewmates were James Lovell and Jack Swigert. 4 days into the mission, the oxygen system in the service module failed, forcing an emergency return to Earth. Fred is a Marine Corps fighter pilot and Air Force test pilot. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honor. Now, I've got a couple of questions that we're going to start with that are individual questions for each of you.
All right.
And if time permits, we'll grab some questions from the audience who will have far more interesting questions than mine, I'm sure. Fred, so this I find hard to believe. I read that you, when you were a naval cadet, were a nervous flyer. Now, how, if that's true, how do you end up a fighter pilot, a test pilot, and an astronaut?
Well, at the time I joined the service, the Korean War was going on. I was actually, first 2 years in college at the time, majored in journalism. I was going to be you in the 50s.
I think you made a different choice.
Right, yeah. And my dad, when I decided I was going to serve my country, he said, you ought to try to get a commission. And I looked, and at the time I had 2 years of college, and I was 18 years old. And I looked, and the only program that fit that age and that 2 years was the Naval Aviation Cadet Program. The Air Force required 19 at the time. So I applied, and I had never been in an airplane in my life, not even sitting on the ground. That shows you what an 18-year-old, how far ahead they think, right? But anyway, I got there, and the other people that come from all parts of the country into that class, 64A, they were talking about aviation stuff. So I was getting nervous. I started really sunk in that to get that permission, I was going to have to fly an airplane and land on a carrier. So it turned out the first time I flew, it was magical. And right there, I quit being John Zarella. And I now was going to be, my career was going to be in aviation. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to be, but that just did a 90-degree turn for me.
And you certainly made the right decision. Al, I wanted to ask you now, while you were on orbit and you're circling the moon, your crewmates, they're on the surface. What was it like, and what were you doing while you were up there circling by yourself?
It was wonderful. I was so happy to get rid of those guys. We had just spent 4.5 days together in a small spacecraft about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. And if you've ever tried something like that for a couple of weeks, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It was nice for them to go somewhere else for a while. So yeah, but you have to also at the same time, my training was in the Air Force with single-seat fighters, and I was very used to flying by myself. In fact, I didn't really like to take people with me because I didn't want to be responsible for them. I was okay by myself, but there's a difference. When I was in lunar orbit, I try to describe it this way, kind of. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I was alone, but I sure was not lonely. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I had a lot to do. Only slept 4 hours a night because I had so much to do. Our flight plan was absolutely crammed full of stuff, and I was busy all the time. So I never really got very much of a thought.
Most memorable event on your flight now? I think I know what it is.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say there were a couple of events that were quite memorable. One was when Dave and Jim came back up into orbit and we docked and they came into the command module and I sent them back to the lunar module to get cleaned. And I wouldn't let them in until they cleaned themselves up. And the other was when I did a spacewalk on the way home because that was a pretty unusual place to be. We were about 196,000 miles out And I went out and got the film out of 2 canisters. We had 2 cameras on board. Brought the film back in, went back out a 3rd time, stood up on the outside of the service module and just looked around, and it was absolutely unbelievable because I could see both the Earth and the Moon at the same time. So those 2 places. Pretty cool.
On your flight, 13, after you have the explosion, was it any time to say, oh my God, geez, you know, we came all this way, we wanted to go to the moon, you know, and now we can't go to the moon, we got to try. Or were you just concentrating on getting back safely? What was going through? Was there that period of letdown?
The instant thing when we realized we lost the 1 oxygen tank was disappointment. I was sick to my stomach. We lost the landing. I trained for 2 previous missions. I've been the backup on 8 and 11. And it's where you train just as much as the prime guy, hoping you'll get to go, and didn't get to go. And it was not life-threatening because we had, I thought, a second good oxygen tank. There was no question about what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to come home ASAP, was without reference in mission rules. That was the answer. So it was mostly just horribly disappointing right away.
And then, of course, after that, the concentration changes to, we got to figure out how the heck to get home.
We collectively, yes, with a lot of people on the ground, that was, we never got to a point anywhere in the flight where there was nothing left to do, that we were at the edge of the cliff. The things that had to get done were figured out and kind of kept us ahead with time still remaining to work the next issue. And so it was really never like, I don't think I'm going to get back. The only thing I worried about at the end was how the mothership, which was never supposed to be turned off, and we abused it for 4 days when we turned it off, froze the water tanks in that vehicle. And so we violated every specification on certainly all the avionics. And I worried a little bit how it would perform when it came back to life. Turned out we had the 2nd most accurate splashdown of the program if you look at the Apollo mission report. Only Apollo 10 did better. So I kidded the engineers in some of the debriefings. I told them they over-designed it. I was happy you did.
You mentioned you were back up on 8 and 11.
Yeah, backup on 8 was Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and myself. And then Mike got well. So I ended up serving another backup on 11.
So when you were sitting on the pad on your flight, after being a backup on the 2 flights, what's going through your mind just before liftoff? You're thinking, finally.
It was less than I'd seen. I'd been the part of the closeout crew for both 8 and 11. I was in the capsule like midnight earlier, going through the route with the launch director, switch by switch, circuit breaker by circuit breaker, rather tedious thing, but getting all the switch setup done for the crew to enter. And they were excited. I mean, it was obvious when they got there, they were excited, they were ready to go. And both times I was the last one out of the capsule. I wish I could have been a stowaway. But I had to crawl underneath the couches and come up in front and then crawl out of the hatch to get out of the spacecraft. I felt we were not as emotional that way because of our crew change. 2.5 days before launch, Jack Schweiger replaced Ken. There was not a technical issue like some of the movie gave a flavor of that. That was not the case. Jack, as the backup, was well trained, as I was as the backup. I could have flown any of the missions I trained for. And but it was just that late, which kind of do with the backup. About a month before launch, mentally at least, I started pulling back to say, well, Buzz probably ain't gonna break his leg. So I'm not going to get to go fly. And so you mentally pull yourself back and say, well, I've done all the work, but I'm just going to go watch somebody else fly. And so that was a tremendous emotional flip-flop, 2.5 before days, when I'm sure Jack was kind of in that mode. I'm not going to get my chance this time. And Ken, of course, had done the backup on 11, and he was scared to go. And so it kind of took a little bit of that excitement flavor around the time we went out. I don't think it was as excitement and spirited. Obviously, we were going, and I was ready to go, but it wasn't the same as I saw on 8/11.
Now, you were the technical advisor for First Man.
One of them.
One of the technical advisors, as far as I'm concerned, the technical.
Well, Joe Engel did the extra stuff.
Did they get it right? Both the technical side and how they portrayed Neil. I know you're quoted as saying perhaps they made Neil a bit too aloof.
That was my impression. We all knew Neil pretty well. And I never saw Neil as the stoic and as the aloof person that they showed in the movie. Now, I don't know who was responsible for that, whether it was the screenwriter or Damien Chazelle or who. But that was one of the things about the movie that I was a little bit questioning about. There are some other things too. You know, the movie's been both honored and damned. I mean, it's kind of, people kind of take two sides about whether they like the movie or not. And some of the issues about the movie were, of course, planting the flag. And I've always thought that was kind of a nonsense sort of feeling, planting the flag. The movie was about Neil Armstrong. And then you get back into how did they portray Neil, and I really felt like they hadn't portrayed him as a kind of friendly, quiet. Neil was not a recluse by any means. He was just quiet. But he had the greatest sense of humor in the world. And if you got to know Neil pretty well, and I'm sure Fred knew him probably better than I did, but I always thought Neil was a wonderful, funny guy, very friendly, and he never, ever put anybody down. He was always good to everybody. But I thought that was, in the movie, was a little bit overplayed. But I got to tell you about one thing in the movie. Kind of funny. I've told everybody this. I can't help but to talk about it. We're in Atlanta making a movie. We're doing it at the Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, and they are going to film the lunar landing. And they're going to do it in a stock quarry that's out in Stockdale, Georgia, which is about 30 miles away from Atlanta. And the crews had worked on this quarry for weeks, getting it ready to look like a lunar surface. And they did a really, really superb job. They're going to film Neil coming down the steps as, you know, and to do that, you have to have the lighting just right. So they had this $30,000 bulb that became the sun for the filming of this thing, which burned out after a couple of days. They had to go buy another one, so they were part of it. That's why movies cost so much. And they had to do this at midnight because they had to have the sun behind the lunar module with the sun shining down on it. And we're all out there. When you make a film, you go out 10 hours before you need it for anything, but they got to have you there. So we're out there, skating out there with our overcoats on and mittens and all kinds of stuff. It's below zero. I mean, it's right around zero. So the big moment comes, roll camera, action, and he gets out of the spacecraft, starts walking down the ladder, and it started to snow. And I thought that was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. You gotta think about that a little bit, but that was pretty funny at the time. I wish they left that in the movie.
Yeah, then you know what a lot of people would have been saying, don't you?
Yeah, it's all fake.
Fred, you were supposed to fly, as we saw in the movie, it was canceled, Apollo 19, right? Were you scheduled to fly 19 if it had gone?
Yes, I started as a backup about a month after we landed on 13. Deke gave me another job. I was given as the backup commander to John Young. And he assigned and asked me if it was okay, Jerry Carr and Bill Pope. They were the crew. We were now set in a normal rotation of free flights. We were flown 19. And we trained about 4 or 5 months, and they ended up canceling 18 and 19. But I inherited Stu Russo and Ed Mitchell, who had just come off 14 and Phil at dead, as it turned out, backup crew 7.
But then, even though that didn't work out, here comes shuttle. And you end up doing a vast majority of the approach and landing tests, right, on Enterprise.
Yeah, that I look at as probably the biggest thing in my career. As I left the Astronaut office for 4 years and went to work for Aaron Cohen in the Orbital Project office. And so I sat on the source board looking at every engineering. I was on the proposal team to evaluate who we gave the shuttle contract to. Ron Close, I never mentioned that much when I later joined Grumman. But anyway, at any rate, from there on, went into design development. I ran the ops team through all the design reviews through CDR on Enterprise and through Columbia on PDR on Columbia. So it's much more than Apollo. When we arrived, Apollo was essentially, I call it roughly, finished with design. They were into building things, cut metal. And so we missed that early phase, whereas I was involved with shuttle from day one. So it was great then to go back to the astronaut office and get to fly the first vehicle. So it's kind of a womb to tomb experience. And
Well, what did you think when the first time you flew that thing? Did you think it was, I mean, was it easy to handle? Was it?
I'll tell you what I was nervous about was two things. One, we'd already pretty well had to admit we had about a 2-year slip in the first orbital flight. And we had no backup Enterprise. We had one when we started the program, we canceled it for funding. Shuttle didn't get the money Apollo did for several years. And we had no backup vehicle, and we had changed presidents. The program had been started by Nixon, and Jimmy Carter had come in. He didn't kind of indicate how much he loved aerospace when he canceled a B-1 bomber, I think, in the first 2 months of office. It was a submarine, yeah. So I worried about that a lot. I was not worried about my danger because I'm sitting in the ejection seat. So was Gardo Fulton who flew with me. The people that took the risk were those in the 747. Fitz Fulton, Tom McMurtry, Vic Harton, and Skip Guidry. Those 4 people weren't sitting in the ejection seats. So something had really gone wrong with the control system. First time we would get to look at it when we separated. And we'd hit the 747, they would have been lost. Gardo and I could have just punched out. But that was kind of what was in my mind. I felt a lot of load on my shoulders that if I crashed this thing, Carter may decide that'd be the end of the program right there.
Well, it's a good thing you did.
Yeah, right.
Al, you and I, at one time we talked very recently, and I asked you a question, and you said, so the question was, you told me that you'd never seen a UFO, but you had seen an alien. So you need to explain yourself to this audience.
Well, I seen recently that the Navy is coming up with all kinds of UFO stuff. I don't know what that's all about. If I were to try and prove an alien, then I really want a piece of one that I can analyze and then find out that it's not from Earth. And then I'd say, okay, maybe there's a UFO, right? But when you talk about aliens, well, of course, this is my own philosophy. A lot of people don't agree with me. But I'll tell you what I think about it. I've been asked if I've ever seen an alien. I said, yes. Do you see them very often? I said, yeah, I see them every day. Where do you see them? When they go to the bathroom and look in the mirror. That's when I see an alien, because I think there's a little thing in the back of my mind that thinks we might be alien. We might be the alien that we talk about all the time. We might have come from somewhere else. See, to me, that's the basis of that is the underlying cause of the space program to begin with, is to give us the capability to get away from this Earth when we have to. And that may be billions of years from now, but every single living creature on Earth has a prime imperative of survival of the species. I don't care what it is. We go from grass to trees to animals to people. The prime imperative is always survival of the species. And I believe that there's a little genetic drive in our brain. We don't even realize it probably. But I think that that's why we're getting ready to go into space. And I think the day will come when You know, the sun, we know, that's a fact, the sun will burn out all its energy. That might be billions of years from now, but that's a fact. And we're gonna have to be ready to go somewhere else when that happens. Who's to say it didn't happen somewhere else and they came here? I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe it happened then.
Yeah, right, who knows?
Questions for the both of you. Al, you wrote a book of poetry,
Correct.
right? Inspired by your Apollo experience, correct? For the most part, or no?
I suppose, yeah, so to speak.
You can say I'm wrong if you want.
Well, I thought it was something else at the time, John.
Many astronauts have said, flying changes you. It's a spiritual experience. Did it affect both of you that way or not?
I don't think so.
No. To me, the mission to go to the moon was, for me, just another great adventure. You needed like an airplane, you needed a higher reading altimeter. But to me, that was, you know, going to the moon is not going very far. Speaking of aliens and what might be out there, I mean, going to the moon is not really going very far. So the first step out of our closet here. And so I was just another great chance to have an adventure for me. That's what it was about.
The poetry I wrote, I thought, was as much caused by total exhaustion as anything. It wasn't just the flight. When I got back, we went in 14 before the flight, not after. So when I got back, these guys all went in 14 after. But when I got back, we went in 14 after the flight.
We did.
Oh, you didn't. That's right. You didn't. That's right. You didn't have to. Yeah, you didn't have to rub it. You didn't have to put up with Carl Sagan and all that, right? But we were in quarantine before flight because of the measles scare on your flight, right? So we all went in quarantine before flight. We didn't have to flight. When I got back, we'd debrief all day long and then go home. And I was living by myself across the street in Nassau Bay. And there'd be a party going on at my house, and all the neighbors would be there, my folks would be there, my brother would be there, at the bar. Every single night that was going on. And then finally about midnight, I kicked everybody out. After 2 weeks, I was so totally exhausted, I could hardly move. And I'd sit there in the dark, and I was so exhausted I couldn't go to sleep. And I'd sit there in the dark, complete darkness, with a legal pad and a pencil, and just let my hand go. And I wasn't even thinking about what I was doing. And that's the book poetry. So, you say, can it be because of the flight, or am I being channeled by somebody, or what's going on? I don't know. I have no idea, but that's how it came about.
You know, it would have been for me, if I was going, I would have been very spiritual. It would have been, oh God, oh God, oh God.
Oh God, oh God, oh God. Yeah, give it back spiritual. Right. Yeah.
Why do you guys think the last 3 Apollo flights were canceled? Was it more than just budget?
Was there more to it than simply just budget?
I was not with the higher officials. What I heard was that Gilruth in particular worried about us losing somebody. And it's kind of like, was the risk worth the gain to get a few more rocks from a different place? But so there's some of that I knew, and our budgets were being cut, sure, as well. We had most of the hardware built, certainly through 18. I think the hardware had been built. 19, the LIM I know was not completely outfitted. So the LIM was not complete. But I think that was some of that mentality at that time when we'd done what the goal was set. We had done more than that. And should we really risk any more crews and maybe leave somebody on the moon?
I agree with you, Fred. We had 6 very successful landings on the moon, and I think there are some nervous people that said the only thing that could happen is if we lose one, then all 6 of those landings will be for naught. And I think there was a terrific momentum in the management world, and of course they could rationalize it by saying we need the money for the shuttle, which was 10 years away at that point, or 9 years away. It could be rationalized that we do that, but I do believe that there was a little chicken going on.
Back in the 60s and early 70s, did you guys think within the astronaut office, within the Apollo program, did you think we'd be at Mars by now?
I did. Yeah, I thought we had the momentum, and of course the technology was still a question mark. But if we kept moving forward, I thought surely we'd be there by now. Naively, I guess, but that was kind of my thoughts.
I thought the same thing with a caveat. Back then, in the 60s and 70s, I don't think we really realized the issues and the problems that we're going to face when we go to Mars. I don't think we thought at the time about the radiation problem the way we do today, because we're finding out that that's going to be a big kicker in going to Mars, is the solar radiation. So I don't know how you see that, Fred, but I think we would love to have seen it. We would cheer for it to go to Mars by now. But I think there were some issues that had never really been pulled out into the open and looked at seriously.
Long-term goal for space exploration. You touched on it briefly. What should I know in 2024 we want to go to the moon now and then on to Mars, but those are really very short-term in the history of the future of the planet, the species. What should be our long-term goal?
Go ahead, Fred.
Well, obviously, now you've gotten into it a little bit, for various reasons, not just the sunburning now. If you listen to Rusty a little bit, you think a big meteor is going to hit us sooner or later.
Well, and if you listen to some of the politicians, you think that maybe people are going to be the issue. So
Yeah. So certainly finding a way to habitate another place, not necessarily near term, but long term, should be a goal. To me, it just seems philosophical. We're uniquely, whether it be aliens or not, Al, we're uniquely the first critters on Earth who could do it. Not sure we got the answers on how to do it. If we even knew there was a life on another planet by a star somewhere to get there today, it would be a mission impossible. But why should we sit here when we've been blessed with this talent as a creature and not utilize it for that kind of good? I mean, it's incredible how much money we spend on lots of things, and why shouldn't we have some? Now, to start down that journey, though, one thing we're seriously neglecting is the upfront research. It's been neglected for a number of years now. Even the Air Force did a lot of rocket work earlier. NASA did, and they're kind of, considering the funding we were putting in earlier, it's backed away quite a bit. And you'd like to go there quicker. I don't know if it's Scotty beam me up, but I hate to think of sitting 8 months to get to Mars. You know, you'd like to get there a little faster. And of course, you need to go a lot faster if you're going to think of going out to the nearest star or further. So we need to continue doing basic research in several areas that we're not doing. We're more on the immediate front, which is good. But we've really neglected, I'll call, looking further out. I don't know if we can push ion, plasma faster, those kind of things we're not doing.
Franklin Chang, he has working out.
Yeah.
I think one thing that Fred touched on, and which I think is kind of an important part of what's been going on with the space program since it started. I'm a firm believer in one of the major benefits of our space program is the technology that we develop. If you're going to invest in a technology that's going forward, and it becomes successful, then you're going to get a nice return on your investment. Now, I've heard that the investment that the country made in the Apollo program came back to the federal government 7-1, okay? And that was because of the commercialization of the technology development, such as silicon chips and the ability to weld titanium. I mean, there are a whole set of technologies that made this country the most successful commercial manufacturing company in the world. And the taxes that were derived from all of that came back to the U.S. government. All the people that were employed during those periods, the most successful time in this country, paid back the federal government 7-1. And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as we go forward, because I think money that gets, like Fred said, we need the research. And that research is going to lead to something that we can't even envision today. We're going to need another paradigm shift probably in technology to allow us to go to Mars and do it relatively quickly and do it safely. I think we're going to need that. And I think that the money that gets invested in that kind of technology is going to come back to us in the terms of successful commercial products.
We have a couple of minutes left, so if anybody out there has, you're gonna have to yell, because you have a microphone. Anybody have a question out there for these two American heroes? No question? No questions? There's one.
So this might be out of your, area. I know you set up to the moon and so forth. But what's interesting to me is we've had Galileo, we've had Cassini, and now we actually go out there, to go see and explore the Jovian planets. But Neptune is the second most meteorologically active planet in our solar system after Earth. So what is your opinion on Neptune orbiter to kind of get more idea about forecasting weather on Earth based on what we observe out there?
Boy, you're out of my field.
Yeah. I don't have a clue.
Let me tell you about the Neptune orbiter.
Yeah, right. That
Question over here.
If you're going to do that, you might as well go to Pluto too.
We did?
Yeah, but not people.
I was wondering how quickly do you think within the next couple of years you'll be taking blockchain and cryptocurrency to space?
Take what? Taking what now? Currency?
Taking blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Oh, blockchain and cryptocurrency
Space, yes.
to space.
Yeah, we're ready.
Well, let me tell you about blockchain and cryptocurrency. You're out of our league for that one.
Out of my league.
Yeah, we got some regulars in the audience.
I got enough trouble managing my money, let alone
We got one.
blockchain.
There's one back here.
Yeah, so you guys had to go with the, the college program ended with waiting public support. So I'm just wondering, if you have any advice for the leadership at NASA now, how do you do things differently, for us to keep it enthusiastic and support the program?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't want to answer.
Well,
Too many friends in this room. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, the progress you hope for, and we all hope for, is not totally in NASA management's hands, obviously. And that's a big problem. I don't know what the latest polls are of the U.S. People at large to really push combination of an administration and the Congress, because as you know, it's very misaligned on a lot of things these days, to get together and have that mutual support that Apollo had. Funding I'm talking about. And somehow, unless you get that alignment, it's going to be tough sledding. And we suffered through NASA, through all the programs we flew. I had another 4 years I spent at Grumman. I ran the system engineering integration contract on Space Station Freedom in Washington. And in '87, if one vote had shifted in the House of Representatives, there would be no space station today. And I had people recruited hard across the country, getting engineers aboard, and they were putting out their resumes. They're ready to believe me. So it's been that way ever since Apollo. We've really not had that coalescence of the U.S. government at large, administration, Congress, ready to step up and do what's needed to get done to get the job.
Fred, I know back when John Kennedy made his pronouncement back in 1961, there were events going on in the world that were in his favor to say that. The Russians had launched Sputnik, and they then launched Yuri Gagarin, and we were in danger of having the Russians overseeing the U.S. from space, and that threw the fear of God into a lot of people, and I think he picked up on that, and I think he had a general population of the country behind doing something so that wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have the Russians doing that. Now, you go ahead a couple of years, that allowed JFK to get all the funding out of Congress, of both Democrats and Republicans. They got together to do that because they're all concerned about the same thing. But as the years go by and we start flying and we're successful flying, the interest shifted. And I know on my flight, one of the complaints that came from people watching TV was that they'd taken the basketball game off to show our flight. And that's the truth. I mean, that's what happens in this great country that we're in, is that people don't have long-term memories about things. They don't think long-term. It's what happens next week or next year or something. And they get very bored when we're successful. They like the challenge. Well, we proved that going to the moon was maybe not quite the challenge they thought it was, so it got to be boring. And I believe that had an impact on NASA and on the president and the government, and that's why we lost 18, 19, and 20. That's part of it.
Ladies, yes, sir.
I could be wrong, but that's my feeling.
Last question. Mr. Culbertson, sir.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay, Frank.
You guys like my eyes, but because you're real. But
You should be up here, Frank.
so, what would you say to the college students, the young engineers, the people who are now building the space program and doing really great things? What would you say they should be focusing on in order to take us to our life happening, or take us further out of the universe, keep them motivated to keep doing what we do, and it's important to the country. How do we keep them moving?
Wonder where you got that question.
What I do with children, and that's of all ages, I generally like to talk to 4th and 5th grade or higher. The younger ones don't have a large attention span. And, but anyway, I try to influence them at any age is, and hopefully some have already figured out I'm talking to, but to figure out what the talent you've been born and blessed with. And now how to best align that talent with a career that makes sense to best use that talent. And that kind of will put you in a nice path where the hard work that otherwise it would seem hard, you may have to enjoy it, get through school, get through training, to meet a goal. And then obviously it'll be a lot more enjoyable and fun on the job. And you're likely to be much happier in your life and much more successful as you move through your career. It's kind of one of the secrets of life is to figure out how to get all that aligned. Now, it's getting more complicated in the current world because I think they only had about 5 or 6 engineering disciplines when I went to school, and now there's a bunch more. So the choices of quote career path have gotten broadened. But that's a key to success in life as far as I'm concerned.
I'd answer your question kind of in 2 ways. I think we need to excite those who are in the STEM programs these days. I think that STEM training is the most critical thing that we need to promote in the future. I know that engineers and scientists and designers and mathematicians and that kind of college student, we're seeing fewer and fewer of those as the liberal sciences are growing in our college system. So I think we need to pay attention and excite those kids who are in the STEM programs. But I also believe we need to motivate those young people who are not thinking of STEM. I think we need to start in middle school and start generating interest in STEM courses further on. And I see that all over the world. We're behind in this country. I can see that where places I go. If you go to China, you go to the United Arab Emirates, or you go to Bahrain, or you go to France, or you go to Germany, you'll see that they're really hot on their young people studying the hard sciences, and they do quite well at it. So I think we need to get on kids in middle school and high school, and we need to motivate them into the STEM courses. And we need to do that any way we can. I know, obviously, I deal with a scholarship program. But we're catching kids in college And the problem is, when you give a scholarship to a kid in college, they've already decided what they want to do. So then you're not gonna change anything. So we need to focus on the younger people, and I think there are some programs in the country that do that very nicely. Well, we as a nation need to focus on it. You know, interesting statistic I heard. I don't know how true it is, but we graduate 70,000 engineers a year in this country from college. But I hear the Chinese graduate 700,000 a year. 10 to 1, what we're doing. And they're serious about it. So this, I think, is a challenge that this country's got. And I'm not sure what the, you know, what the answer is, but we need to do everything we can to get these young people oriented in the right way, and not force them to do it, but because I think to back, you know, along with that, I absolutely agree with Fred. I think young people need to do what they need to do. They need to follow their dreams, and they need to do well at it. And if that's in the STEM courses, then all the better for all of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, now Warden. We have a couple of presentations for you. First of all, you folks heard Larry mentioning the fact that there was a gathering at this little Italian joint where Frank Culbertson and Al and Fred were celebrity chefs for a night, although they didn't cook anything. Celebrity chefs. And so, you know, we just wanted to give you a token of a very little token of our appreciation from Zarellas. And to you too. You were one of the, oh yeah, I know, good. And now I'd like to bring Theron back up to the stage.
Hey, John, I want to make sure you get the coveted coin for the 46th Space Congress for your phenomenal job. Gentlemen, to say you're American hero is an understatement. So, and you saw the standing ovation, well deserved. The inspiration you gave to everybody in this room and to our country, I want to thank you. But I think best way, and I hope you don't have one of these already, by the way, but there is a 50th Apollo anniversary of silver coin, and we'd like to present these to you. And these are from the U.S. Mint as our token of gratitude.